trying not to delay that too much, but out of deference to Commissioner Portune, we wanted to provide a little bit of time for him to get up here. So we'll go ahead and get started. We may take a pause, but we'll go ahead and get going with the agenda. So first order of business is introductions. So Leslie Hervey is at my far right. She is the assistant to the clerk to the board, who is Jackie Paniotto, sitting next to her. Commissioner Portune will be seated to my immediate right. To my immediate left is the vice president of the commission, Stephanie Summerow-Dumas. Next to her is County Administrator Jeff Aludo, and legal counsel Michael Friedman is on the left end of the dais. So we start our meetings with a silent prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand if you can. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next we have the approval of the minutes of the previous session. I will move to approve of the minutes.
Second.
Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. We have a couple of recognitions, and for those of you that don't generally attend our meetings, we like to recognize folks that have been with the county for a significant amount of time. Today we've got two folks that have been here for 25 years and served the county and the constituents of this county in a couple of different departments. And so we are going to go ahead and move forward with that. I'm going to take one, and Commissioner Summerow-Dumas is going to take the other. So first on the list is Mary Berta Coggeshall from Planning and Development. There you are. Come on forward if you don't mind. We're going to have you stand at the dais. Oh, good. Commissioner Portune's here. Welcome. We're just getting started. I just told folks that you were making your way up. Thank you for being here. I'm going to read. No, you're going to have to say a few words. So I'm going to read a little something about you that was provided by your colleagues in recognition of your years of service. Mary graduated from Miami University with a bachelor's degree in urban and regional planning in 1991. So we're going to do the math now and find out how old you are. She began working for Hamilton County as a co-op student with the engineer's office. Well, I'm sure Ted was here at that point, right? Because he's been here for a million years. The engineer's office while attending Cincinnati State for surveying. She subsequently took a full-time position as a zoning plans examiner on June 2nd, 1994. In her 25 years in this position, Mary has seen many changes in the department, from technological advancements to department mergers, numerous personnel changes. Mary has been an integral part of the evolution of the department, or the Development Service Division. Mary also spent time working for the Stormwater Division for 7 years, helping with field work and GIS improvements. Mary has been the Development Services Division's GIS representative to CAGIS and has been responsible for maintaining the official zoning map and other important zoning GIS layers. Throughout her 25 years with Hamilton County, Mary has been willing to take on new roles and tasks and has continually improved both her personal role in the development process and the Development Service Division of the Planning and Development Department as a whole. Mary is a valuable member of the Development Services team and is an integral part to the success of the zoning process. Mary, thank you and congratulations on 25 years in Hamilton County. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
With us in the back.
Yes.
Congratulations, Mary.
All right, one more?
Yeah, you're good.
Perfect, thank you much.
All right, now you get to say a few words.
Or not.
Or not, but I'm sure you want to say a few words.
I thought about this last night, and nothing's sticking other than we really work hard upstairs. We really, really do. and it's team effort, and I'm proud of it. I talk about my work a lot, and it's always proud. And I'm talking about the hard times and the good times, and we've all survived a lot. So many changes upstairs on the 8th floor, and I can see a lot more work to be done, so you're going to need me for about 10 more years.
Very good. Thank you. Hey, Mary. Mary, I got the rest of your box, so.
And Madam President, if I could just very briefly state that I had the pleasure of riding up in the elevator with Mary Berta on the day that was her precise 25th anniversary, I think. And I don't know that I've ever seen anyone more excited about the anniversary date. I mean, it was like a birthday. I think she brought food in or something for the office. So I've known Mary Berta in her capacity since I started back in, I guess it was 2006 in the administration. She's just a great asset to the Planning and Development Department.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Mary Berta.
Yeah, thank you. All right, our second recognition is Richard Rucker, and Vice President Sumro Dumas is going to do the honors.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to do this, Madam President. Mr. Richard Rucker, Job and Family Services, 25 years of service. You can bring your wife up if you like. She's okay. I met her earlier. Richard began his career with JFS in 1994 as an eligibility technician. He handled caseloads that included families receiving ADC, food stamps, and medical benefits. Richard spent 2 years in the Income Maintenance Department. In 1996, Richard moved to the Revenue Enhancement Benefits Management Unit. He started out determining emergency assistance for Children's Services cases. In addition, he opened Medicaid cases for children placed in the custody of Children's Services. Richard spent about 15 years doing medical-only cases. About 8 years ago, he started doing foster care and adoptions assistance cases under the same department. Richard obtained his BA degree in psychology from Central State University. Richard has been married to his wife, I didn't even know it was on here, Charlena, for 13 years. They have 3 sons together, Napoleon, William, and DeMarco. Richard and his wife have 12 grandchildren. He said there might not be enough time in this ceremony to name all of them. Richard states, in quotes, he has been blessed to have accumulated lots of friends and memories while working at the county. Thank you, Richard Rucker, for your 25 years of dedicated service to the Hamilton County Children's Services Department. Congratulations. Oh, no. And we have a very nice pin for you. Yes, congratulations. Yes.
Congratulations, Richard. Thank you. Thanks.
Quick smile over here.
And you're welcome to say something.
I would just like to say that it's an honor and a privilege to be recognized for my services. And it's been a pleasure working with the team that I work with, from my team members. A couple of them has come out to celebrate with
Quite
me,
a
and
few,
my
yeah.
supervisor and his supervisor also. I just want to say thank you to everyone.
Thank you. And Madam President, I would also like to give a special thank you, being a licensed social worker myself, and then working in Job and Family Services with some of the boundaries and structures that you have to follow, and wanting to do things maybe sometimes a little different to help everyone. So I certainly appreciate your efforts. So thank you personally.
Thank you. Now, we are going to move on with the rest of the agenda. So for those of you that were here for the presentations, this is your opportunity to move on out if you'd like. You're welcome to stay, of course. All right, we're right on time for our public hearings. So the first of those is a hearing to consider the Harrison Avenue project. Is Tim Gilday, are you going to come forward? So I'm going to ask Tim. Yes, you are. Tim, please come forward and Yeah, give us the lay of the land here.
Okay, we'll start off with some preliminary stuff. In front of you, there are two things that I put. One is a little fact sheet about the project itself, and there's a two-page sheet that, because we haven't done an establishment hearing for a while, that answers some questions about what an establishment is and everything else. That two-page sheet was included in the letters that were mailed out to the various property owners, but that sheet is just strictly for your benefit as we go through this. Over on the far wall, and I hope they can see it, the top plats show the construction plans. They are, if we want to say Harrison is not quite running east and west, Wesselman Johnson would be down here. Philview Circle is coming like this. And of course, the main line is Harrison. On that sheet, the colors don't show up real well, but there is some curb. That is the magenta. There is drainage. Excuse me. The red areas would be driveway adjustments. If I can hit one right about there. The darker gray is the pavement widening. The lighter gray is the existing pavement that will be resurfaced. And the sidewalks are in the orangish color. And God said let there be light. On the bottom one, this shows the right-of-way and easements that have to be acquired. On that plat, the red colors are the right-of-way takes, the additional takes that will be needed. On your sheet, and let me get to the right one, there are 10 parcels throughout that whole project that will have to be have additional right-of-way acquired. There are 2 permanent storm sewer easements, which are in the dark blue. There is 1 channel easement that is also in the dark blue, and there are 48 temporary easements, which are the green areas. In most of those cases, they are around driveways that we have to adjust. The easements are strictly, as they say, temporary. It's more like a rental, which allows the contractor to get on private property and do whatever work is needed, whether it's driveway adjustment, regrading the front yard, or whatever. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
We do have a number of speakers on the issue, whoops, sorry. I just have one preliminary question related to where this is going in. Is it connecting to sidewalks on either side?
It is, whoa, I'm dropping things. There is a sidewalk over on this end. On Philview, there's a sidewalk that it's tying into. There's a little piece right there. There'll be right about, where'd I go? Right about here. Mm-hmm. There is a future bike trail proposed. If I understand off the plat, which would be on the first one, someplace back in this area, the township has constructed a bike trail, and that connection will be done by the township in some future time. But there are sidewalks that they will be connecting to, yes.
Okay, thank you. Do any other questions or comments before we hear from the speakers?
Just one question, Madam President, since we just got this. Under traffic volumes, the 27,000 number, is that current or projected?
No, that's current. That would be current. I don't know what years those were taken from. Those are current ADTs.
Okay.
I'd have to go back to my records, and it's probably a couple of years old, but those are current or the last traffic counts that we do have. They are not projected.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Not for me, Madam
Okay,
President.
great.
I'll wait to hear from the speakers.
Right, great. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tim. If you would wait in the wings, we'd appreciate it. So I've got a bunch of speakers cards up here, and I'm going to try to make heads or tails of some of this to make sure I'm calling the right people for the right issue. So I believe I've got these in the right order. So Glenn Swafford, are you here? Are you here for this?
I'd like to hold off just a little bit because I think others are going to cover what I got to talk about. So
All right.
waste your time.
I will put you in the back of the deck. It's Dale R. Mahuta. There, please come forward. Thank you for being here. You've got the pleasure of the floor for 2 minutes.
Dale Mahuda at 5793 Philview Circle. I had a statement ready, but I'm thinking that perhaps what I wrote was not appropriate because I'm looking at this right now, and I just have one question I want to ask right off the bat. Is I was under the impression that because it was called a shared multi-use pathway, the way it was described from Green Township, and that's kind of a vague thing, and we had stakes put in our front yards, which were very confusing and very difficult to figure out what was going on, so we weren't sure whether it was going to be a 5-foot conveyance, which is minimum, or whether it was going to be something that was going to be about 10 feet wide. So it was very difficult to figure out. I'd have a lot to say about something that was 10 foot wide, but a 5-foot conveyance might be workable, maybe a little tweaking. I have a section of 25 arbor vitae trees, 8 to 10 feet tall, and also 10 knockout roses that are in a bank, a privacy bank along the side. And according to the plat there, it says it's circled and is supposed to be eradicated or removed, and I'm not so sure that's really necessary. I'd have to talk more about that. But I have a 6-foot space between those trees and what's over here to the road to the edge. And that was my big concern because it's a big hunk of trees and a big hunk of cost. So that was my concern. And I wasn't sure whether this design was part of trying to steer traffic off of the main Harrison Avenue during the construction. This was going to be a sideway along getting around this, or whether there was going to be something to do with the trail and some kind of circuit was going to be created. For the trail purposes, this is a new experience for Green Township, and I think we found that, and I've been on the trail every day, I'm running into women with babies and kids on bikes and teenagers, and I'm running into those kinds of folks, and it's a very pleasant experience. I like this a lot, that trail. And a lot of runners, dedicated runners, that will run on that but will not run next to a road for an obvious reason, you know, pollution, safety, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I tell you what, why don't we wait till we hear from all the speakers and have Tim come back up and then respond to some of the concerns that we're hearing or questions. The next speaker is Joy Mahuta.
Hi. I'm appalled, angry, and disappointed that Green Township did not have a meeting with the residents on Philview over the sidewalk proposed on our properties. Our notification was surveyors not knowing much, weeks later a letter from Hamilton County, and finally a confusing Green Township letter. We also would like to know why the township purchased property on Philview, 5745, and demolished the home. The least you could do is have a conversation with the landowners and work out issues before you use tax funds to draw up expensive plans and purchase property. Our homes are our biggest investment in our life. A potential 10-foot sidewalk is wider than any walkway around. It is certainly a quantum leap to build an oversized sidewalk on a street that currently has none. None. It is our intention to have if it's your intention to have a walking trail both in the front and back of our property, an oversized walkway would consume most of the front yards of 7 out of the 9 homes on the residential side of the street. The other 2 homes would lose matured blue spruces, 3 maple trees, 25 arbor vitaes, 9 knockout roses, and any street side parking. The commercial side of Philview has no sidewalks. The grand sidewalk concept is excessive and out of line for Philview Circle. If the township purchases and have anything to do with the Harrison Trail, I believe you need to rethink your concept. The popularity of the trail is because of the mature trees and natural habitat. There is property for sale next to the trail and abuts Green Township's Hutchinson Preserve. Acquiring this property would enhance the Harrison Trail far better than a loop concept sidewalk. The property has perennial streams, mature trees, deer paths, steep hillsides for more advanced hikers or mountain bikers. The terrain is like the Badland Trail at Miami Whitewater Park. There are funds the township could apply for to pay for the land. Natural trails could be generated with gravel or mulch-based trails. The cross-country teams could use it instead of running roadside near the car exhaust. The Hutchinson Preserve could become a minimalist park with miles of trails and occasional picnic table and grill for family outings. We recently attended a Great Parks meeting, and the surveyed overwhelmingly preferred more walking and hiking trails. It was an overwhelming response that I am sure is consistent with Green Township. Please rethink your proposal. Don't destroy our property values with an excessive sidewalk that won't be utilized. Use the money to enhance the trail and the concept by purchasing the land that connects to it. And here was the form, the paper, the booklet that came from Great Parks, their plans for the comprehensive master plan, and this is what I took that out of.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Our next speaker is Nicholas Ferneding. Ferneding.
Yes. Thank you for letting me speak today. My name's Nick Ferneding. I live at 5803 Philview, which is the corner house on Philview and Hutchinson. We had the misfortune, I personally do not like the trail behind me because we used to have a lot of peace and quiet there. When they moved the trail in, it's got a lot more noise, a lot more traffic. One of the things Tim had talked about is their new plan, which isn't part of this, where they're going to bring that trail up to Hutchinson and to Philview and continue on, which is our biggest problem. Is there's a lot of traffic behind us. We don't want it in front of us because we feel like a bunch of cowboys with the Indians circling us. I actually walked the neighborhood last night, and everyone that I spoke to was opposed to this. There was one girl who works for the sheriff's office that I didn't wake up because she was already asleep. But none of us really want this sidewalk going through our front yard, as you hear from these people where they got 25 feet of their front yard. If you put a 5-foot sidewalk in there, there's 20% of their yard, which is gone. When they put that trail in behind us, they said it's going to be back there. You won't see it. You won't hear it. And unfortunately, with what they're going to continue here, it's just going to make it worse and worse and worse. We want the trail to be back in the woods and keep it back there. I don't want people wandering through our yards. It doesn't work. And the fact that that's 10 feet wide back there, and Tim says he's going to make the one in front 5, well, that's just going to make that sidewalk that much more congested when you compress them people into that space as they're coming through there. And I don't know how many of them are going to use it, but I really don't want them out there. I really don't. If you have to put sidewalks, maybe on the other side of the street, but definitely not on us, because we've just got too much traffic as it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Angela Young Ferneding.
Ferneding.
Sorry, once
Thank
again,
you.
messed that up.
I live at 5803 Philview Circle, and I'm here to voice my opposition to the sidewalk proposition for Philview Circle. Philview Circle currently does not have any sidewalks in place. I live right at the corner, and we've seen an influx in crime, traffic. I currently have a restraining order against someone who threatened me with a knife on the bike trail. I've had to get rid of both of my dogs because of people constantly calling the police on us, and the dog pound because of the constant traffic. There was actually no issue with the dogs whatsoever, but I did go ahead and get rid of my dogs and relinquish them to the dog pound because of the constant aggravation due to increased people population, a lot of activity from the bike trail that already exists. The proposal to increase or move the bike trail up through the side of Hutchinson and on through Philview Circle is just that. It's proposed at this point, and nothing has been determined. But utilizing this proposition for a sidewalk just to enhance a bike trail through Hamilton County and the residents of Green Township is completely preposterous. We don't support the bike trail increasing or the sidewalks at this point. Crime, traffic, and the numbers that you have on the traffic study, to my knowledge, the last traffic study was done over 10 years ago. If that's inaccurate, I would call for somebody to come out and do an additional traffic study at this point before going forward with the sidewalk.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Adam Getzman. Good afternoon.
Adam Getzman, Green Township. This project is primarily a road project funded through a grant, a federal grant, administered through OKI and ODOT, and the walk relocation onto Philview, probably that seems the topic du jour, is all going to be occurring within the existing public right-of-way, so there are no permanent takes associated with the sidewalk. The reason the walk has been moved to that location is because if those of you who know Harrison Avenue, the Philview was created out of an embankment on Harrison, and the walk is being relocated from Harrison Avenue to serve more local traffic than is currently available. The connections that are going to be made, we are funded for a connection from the existing bike trail up through a piece of property at the corner of Philview and Hutchinson. That project has been engineered and is in the process of being approved as we speak by the Stormwater Authority. That's funded through a grant with the Ohio Nature Works grant through the state of Ohio for that connection up to Philview, which would help us enable to have a more looped trail system. I'm sure there will be more questions. I know that our administrator here is here today to answer those, if any, and also one of the elected officials. The township has been committed to expanding sidewalk and pedestrian opportunities throughout the township. It's an ongoing program our trustees have had for a number of years. This is consistent with their program to expand pedestrian opportunities. And again, there are no permanent takes associated. It's all occurring within the public right-of-way. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer, and I'll be available if there are more detailed questions.
Yes, thank you.
I kind of know the project maybe a little better than some other folks.
Thank you. Appreciate you hanging around for questions. Frank Birkenauer, you're the next speaker. Good afternoon.
Hello, Frank Birkenauer, Green Township Administrator. As Adam Getzman stated, this is primarily a road project, and the Harrison Road corridor from an economic development standpoint and commerce is one of our most important thoroughfares and where a lot of the economic development's occurring within western Hamilton County, and it's very important with these improvements. As far as the pedestrian connection, we have received a lot of positive comments about our trail, and the connectivity of that is a concern, obviously, that we allow people from our neighborhoods to be able to walk to the trail as opposed to driving to it. And this would be a means to do so safely. The sidewalk would not be the 10 feet, it would be the 5 feet. So I think Mr. Mahuda and Mrs. Mahuda, we would work diligently to try to save their trees and knock out roses and everything there. And you know, with the temporary easement, we would be likely, if we had to relocate those, would be doing so. I'm not the expert, Tim is on that, but what we want to do is what our residents are asking us and coming to our meetings. We had a strategic plan for sidewalks, and they want the ability to walk to amenities, pedestrian connectivity, and other things in this township, and this is one of the best ways to do it in terms of the location of the sidewalk that's proposed. So, that's it.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Glenn Swafford if you do want to come forward. Okay. Do we have a, hold on, do we have a mobile mic?
Not as long as it, until that red light comes on, it's about as long as I can stand.
Okay.
My name's Glenn Swafford. I live at 5765 Philview Circle, which is the sharp curve my house is right on. I lived there for 27 years. In that amount of time, I've been through 11 mailboxes, some that have been hit numerous times. The last one I put up, I put green tape on it. A hideous looking mailbox you've seen in your life, but it was hit 3 times and the tape actually kept it together. It's very dangerous there. There's been a car take out the telephone pole 50 feet from my chair. There's been a car come through my front bushes. There's been a car twice that went through my yard, through my neighbor's yard, hit the house, and knocked the gas meter off. And that straightaway, it's like a racetrack through there. There's no need for them to put a sidewalk 50 feet from my window in the front of my house. Our houses sit so close to the road, it's ridiculous for them to do that. All the businesses are on the inside of Philview Circle. The sidewalks and the streets, shame on you people for even put any more blacktop down because you don't take care of the streets that you have. You don't take care of the sidewalks that you have. You put them in, and I've driven around, looked at them. Everything new they put in a couple years later, it's all grown up in grass. The streets, I've been yelling and yelling and yelling. Excuse me. You're beating the living daylights out of our cars because you won't fix the streets. I know you put some new blacktop down, but from the top of Harrison Avenue, where they're not even going, down to 74. It's been like that for 5 years. It's disgraceful for that to be like that. And now you want to put more stuff up there. I went around the new Kroger's around the holidays and watched the traffic. There's no need to widen anything down through there. You could fix the turn-ins, fix the streets.
fix the sidewalks, everything's fine. There's not that much traffic through there. Since the new Krogers have got, everybody's used to it being there now, the traffic has kind of went down. But anyhow, that's why I want to talk about how dangerous that curve is. And it's so close to our houses, it's just not fair. You know, if it needs to go there, maybe a guardrail around my house. But the businesses are on the other side, and there's nobody I've ever seen crash on the other side. So
Thank you.
Thank you for hearing.
All right, thank you. So that is the extent of the speaker's card. So I'm going to ask Tim and Frank to come back up, if you don't mind. We've got other trustees in the room. So could you please come back up? I have a couple questions, and I'm not going to monopolize the conversation because I think my colleagues probably have questions as well. But my first question right out of the gate is that this has been described as a road project. The concerns seem to be related to the sidewalk portion of the project. And so I'm curious as to the genesis of this kind of, can you help give us a little bit of history about the genesis of the project to begin with, and then how that relates to the sidewalks?
Okay, if I can clarify something very quickly. If you look at the top plat, which again is the colored up construction plans, the gray, either the light or the dark gray, are pavement improvements, whether they be resurfacing or widening. You will see none of the gray along Philview. Philview pavement will not be widened. It is not being intended to be a bypass to get around traffic on Harrison. The only work being done on Philview will be the sidewalk. And the other thing I'll clarify, if you look real close, and I'm sorry because of the scale of the drawing, where am I? Someplace right there is where Hutchinson comes in. I think it's right there. Right there. From that point to what I'll call the west intersection, that is a 10-foot walk or a 10-foot trail, because the connection to the existing trails proposed right here. From this point going to the east intersection, it will be a normal width sidewalk. It will not be 10 feet. Now, as to the history, I'll let Frank or Adam.
History, wow, this dates back, Ted, back our Harrison Avenue corridor, late 90s. It's been identified, challenges on the pavement cross sections. We ostensibly have from I-74 to Wesselman a 5-lane cross section. So you've got a center turn lane. We're extending that turn lane from Wesselman to the east side of the Kroger's intersection and right to that point. So we'll have a 5-lane section all the way from I-74 to Hutchinson, or the Philview intersection, kind of Philview West. To the east of the Westwood Northern section of this, we are matching a 5-lane and widened lane section that was installed about 5 years ago under the aegis of Green Township investment to widen lanes. We have substandard lane widths. We're widening the lanes for traffic flow purposes, providing the center lane traffic. So it is about managing. It's not a lot of additional capacity. It's really about managing existing traffic more safely and providing a consistent traffic pattern. If you notice, when lanes widen and narrow, it becomes more confusing for drivers, and we have a couple of areas where that occurs. So we'll have uniform width. The sidewalk relocation really stemmed out of part of the design. One of the principles in doing design is kind of a best practices and kind of bang for your buck design. And if I may, this is the old Kroger store. There's a very steep embankment on either side of Harrison Avenue. And the safety of the motoring public to get the 12-foot travel lanes, 11-foot curb lanes, was kind of driving the road portion of this. And to avoid extensive retaining walls and embankment work, it was looked at and explored to take sidewalk that was connecting on Harrison Avenue on the south, we'll call it the south side of Harrison Avenue, and looking at relocating that to Philview. It saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of embankment work by eliminating that, because we were able to use the area that was existing for the existing sidewalk for some of the widening purposes. So it became a value engineering exercise, and then The genesis kind of looked at, could the walk be done within existing right-of-way, so there are no takes, so we're not, again, taking anybody's property. There may be improvements that are in the right-of-way, plantings and whatnot, but I think the impacts are relatively minimal. Now, there is probably some loss of some in right-of-way parking, and I definitely can't address that in terms of what the policies are from the county. But there's not elimination of on-street parking, and there is no consistent on-street parking along Fillview. It is a county roadway. So that's kind of how we got to this point. The grant is to go through the competitive OKI grant process. Mr. Portune knows that is a relatively rigorous process. We were competing with dozens of projects throughout the region for federal dollars. It was deemed a valuable project. It is located on OKI's TIP, Transportation Improvement Plan. So it is subject to federal funding and was awarded federal funding in a competitive application process. And we've been doing design and engineering for about 3 years on the project, just to go through ODOT and county engineering purposes. It takes that long just to do the design work and then work with utility relocation and the various public agencies. So hasn't just, unfortunately, the minute people hear about the first thing, there's a lot of back work that has to go in. And you have to do the design work to determine whether the proposal is feasible, and then we do have a process to roll it out to the public, ultimately to be able to understand the project in more detail. We did have a NEPA meeting. Affected property owners were invited to a public meeting. It was last October.
Well, and I know Triffin Callis is here too. So thank you for being here, county township trustee.
So there have been some.
Well, could you do? So I was going to. My next question was going to be, well, did you have public hearings, and what was
yes,
the
as part of the federal process,
result of that?
Does require all potentially affected property owners to be notified for a public hearing. It's run through the environmental review process through the federal grant program. It is administered by ODOT, so that meeting was held last year. We had some attendance. The vast majority of the folks who attended that meeting were more related to the road portion of it. I think that was kind of the emphasis was, but all affected property owners were identified and notified. So.
Okay, thank you. I've got other questions, but I'm going to go ahead and kick this around a little bit. So,
Thank you, Madam President. Just a few questions. You were saying about the public hearing was about a year ago?
It was a public meeting held under the aegis of the NEPA program, and it's
with state funding, you have to go through cultural, historical, and as part of that, you have to present alternatives at a public hearing, get the input, and you don't have to agree with the public input, but you have to address it as part of some of the design considerations.
Thank you. I'm aware of public hearings, but I thought there was a timetable as it relates to public hearings. You had it last year. You haven't had anything since then?
Not that I'm aware of. The township,
Okay. And was this part of Green Township's strategic plan to do this project? Was it part of your strategic plan?
Well, we have a master sidewalk plan, and we just had a public hearing on sidewalks recently, and this was something that was brought up. And one of the most requested items we get from our residents is pedestrian connectivity and the ability to get to this new amenity that was constructed via either a bicycle or walking, and this would provide that in 27,000 cars a day on Harrison Avenue with a steep embankment. From an engineering and a practical standpoint, is probably not the ideal place to put this. So from an engineering standpoint, this was probably better off in terms of where it was located. That being the case, we just worked with the Hamilton County Health District to become a We Thrive community, and part of that, we had a lot of accidents in Green Township, so our We Thrive initiatives, we're trying to curtail our accident rate, which this is a safety project that will help us there, but also, pedestrian connectivity and walking trails and sidewalks is a big We Thrive initiative in Green Township as well, and this would be consistent with those goals.
Okay, thank you. Which brings me to my next question as it relates to accidents. Is there an accident report as it relates to this area? Not now, but if I can get one to make a better decision, that would be great.
I don't have that information with me. I will get a hold of our traffic engineer and get you reports on that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I will say that they brought up, and it was brought to our attention about a person that hit a fire hydrant and did some other things. That person was severely impaired, and I don't think it had anything to do, judging from the conversation I had with our police officers, with the alignment of the road. They were severely impaired, and there was a question as to whether that person was deceased when they actually hit the fire hydrant.
Okay. Thank you for the additional information. I'm sure it will be more than one accident, though. Prayerfully, not too many. But and I had heard earlier that some residents were in favor of this. I know none of them have spoken here, and I was just wondering at what point was that at the year ago hearing that you had? Because I'm wondering why they're not here. I mean, someone.
I can't answer that question specifically, but I'm sure, as Mr. Portune knows, the people who show up at these type of hearings normally are those who are opposed. You've been through this before. That's the only reason I picked on you.
Yeah, I have too.
Yeah, I mean, usually the people who show up are the ones that are against the project or have something about the project they want to discuss. The other ones just figure we're going to do it anyway, so there's no sense in coming down, or they're in favor of it and they don't come down. So that's the only explanation I can give to you.
But do you have like records of that hearing? Can I see the minutes and stuff from that hearing? So that would be.
I'm sure there's a NEPA report.
Sure.
Yes.
Great. I appreciate that.
The NEPA report. I do not have the NEPA report.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. And one final question, Madam President. The federal funding that you received, how much? This is a $6.5 million project.
It amounts to about $3.5 million.
Okay.
It's about 50%. The project's estimated at roughly $6.5 million.
I'm looking at that.
So it would be roughly 50% of the construction cost. That does not include the cost of right-of-way and/or easements.
It does not include the right-of-way cost?
It does not include right-of-way or easements, no.
So, okay, very good.
That is construction costs alone.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Fortune?
Madam President, thank you. And first of all, thank you to everyone who has spoken here today for coming out. I'm not going to get into an argument with Mr. Gilday, but I have been at plenty of public hearings where proponents of something attended and spoke also. So it's I wouldn't say it's any one scenario that fits. But usually where proponents speak, they feel strongly, they feel passionate about it, in favor of it. And I guess outside of the public figures that are involved, I don't get a sense that there's a lot of public passion around this project in particular. There is generally about sidewalks and pedestrian walkways and that sort of thing. But I'm not sensing that it necessarily came forward with respect to this proposal or this project. So I see you nodding, correct? Is that right? Did you
in terms of
get a sense of that from the general public?
Specifically, did people come out and?
No. I just for this project that's in front of us, the subject of the establishment hearing, I'm not getting a sense that there are a lot of residents in Green Township necessarily who came out and said, yes, this proposal. We really want, we're going to use this.
Improvements. I mean, if you look at our Facebook page and other things, and then the developers along there said, hey, this is a very narrow corridor. We feel really comfortable when we're at the Harrison Green area, and then when you get down to Good Sam where that was widened, but it is, we have been asked by residents and otherwise, we need to widen this area of Harrison Avenue.
Well, we'd certainly do with the street. I'm talking about the sidewalk issue, the sidewalk versus trail issue.
Right.
I'm not getting a sense that there's a lot of, absolutely on the congestion that exists there. And
sure.
everything.
Yeah. I just wanted to
this all the time.
we have not had overwhelming people coming out saying put in this sidewalk.
Right. So what I'm getting a sense here is that the real opposition, if you will, to this project has to do with it's with the sidewalk or trail and extension and the size of that and whether that connects, goes down Hutchinson and becomes part of a loop trail system, or whether there's some other way that it could connect from expanding trails perspective without running through the front yards of the people who have spoken here and who live both on Philview and on Hutchinson. And so that, were there any other options that were discussed around from a trail versus a sidewalk perspective? And what's the real thrust for the trail/sidewalk element? Is it because of traffic congestion and economic development, or is it really the primary thrust of that is, hey, while we're doing this, let's install a pedestrian walkway as well, and why not make that a part of the public park trail system, as opposed to there's a real demand for a sidewalk in these two areas? Do you understand what I'm asking there?
Well, currently the sidewalks on Harrison Avenue are somewhat substandard.
Mm-hmm.
They have not, to the speaker earlier, maintenance is becomes a private matter
Mm-hmm.
to some level. County is involved on sidewalk maintenance, but the
Mm-hmm.
sidewalk is relatively narrow. It doesn't meet current standards. And what we found in suburban areas is that without the backbone infrastructure, we're not having those opportunities for zero-car household folks. We're not having the opportunities for people to walk to stores and interconnectivity. The interconnectivity, if you look at a greater where the location of our trail currently is,
Mm-hmm.
does help connect one of our largest neighborhoods, which is the Bridgetown neighborhood, with Harrison Avenue commercial activity,
Mm-hmm.
in a way that bypasses, makes the trip about a third less long, because you can walk on an environment that is more protected than just walking on public streets. So you can avoid Race Road,
Right.
because you can kind of cut through the back side, which would provide access to ultimately to the Kroger store. Interesting enough, what you'll find is one of the discussions on our next case was about enhancing some of the pedestrian connectivity from Harrison Avenue down to the Kroger store,
Mm-hmm.
which does not exist now. That was part and parcel to the discussions that the trustees had with the developer on this property, that you'll hear about later, about expanding that pedestrian activity to allow people to be able to walk from Harrison Avenue to Kroger's. So it is a multi-layered kind of approach.
Right.
Without the facilities, you're going to get no users. I don't want to be overly cliche, but I mean, if it is built, it can be used.
Mm-hmm.
One of the criticisms we've heard today is there are people already walking on Philview.
Right,
Well, they're walking in the side of the road in the street, which is inherently unsafe.
right.
So, I mean, I think that in our commitment to the additional trailhead connection to Philview is in place. I mean, that funding is in place. The design has been completed. We have been working with the Fernandings on some fencing and some other issues. They're not overly happy about the trail, but I mean, this is a location that had an industrial use on it about 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So
I guess, Adam, if I could interrupt, and I appreciate that background. It almost comes down to the further nuanced view of this as you dig deeper between a sidewalk and a trail as
Correct,
well.
right.
Okay. I heard Mr. Mahuda speak that, you know, maybe he was rethinking his original statement since because of the size was smaller than, in connection with his property than originally.
limiting the impact.
Right, right. And, yes, people do walk there along Philview. It is dangerous. All those areas are dangerous. Sight lines are bad, and cars speed. It's a cut through. It's all those things. But it comes, to me, it almost comes down to, as a matter of policy, is this justified from a traffic management perspective as it relates to pedestrian traffic versus the primary thrust of this is trail expansion, and we're sort of and it's a good thing to think about ways to use scarce dollars for multiple public purposes. I'm not criticizing the thought of that, but the idea to make this a part of a looped trail at the same time, as opposed to there's just a need for a sidewalk, becomes a real element of conflict here.
Well, it does complete a loop. I think there's a little piece of sidewalk that was installed there's a gym and a daycare preschool facility that had right in the middle of Philview in the section what we're talking about.
Right,
That's where an
right.
existing sidewalk exists.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that.
So we're connecting that existing sidewalk, which is an existing business, to
Right.
sidewalks that would exist. So if we move kind of to the east, we'd be connecting that to existing sidewalks on Harrison Avenue. And I think there's arguably a benefit of having existing businesses that have provided sidewalks to be able to connect to existing sidewalks. So connectivity is a goal that we've always had. As you move to that west section,
But that is a pedestrian traffic lane, if you will.
Correct.
Right? It's a
It's
part
a
of.
normal width sidewalk.
Yeah,
Normal width
yeah,
sidewalk, correct,
yeah.
right.
As opposed to, and so it connects to the sidewalks on here. I get all that. That connectivity is important. But one of the issues of objection, it strikes me, and I might be wrong on this, so folks tell me if I am, but is the impact on property, and that it becomes that it's not necessary as part of the traffic management issues and pedestrian use, but it's being done to enhance the trail system, and therefore you're going to get so many more users, recreational users, that are going to be a part of the impact on the residents as well, in contrast to what you would ordinarily have from just pedestrians who want to access the businesses from a sidewalk.
I think there certainly could be some, but I think you have to look at the concept of the trail. I mean, it is not the Loveland Bike Trail.
Mm-hmm.
We have about just less than a mile of off-road dedicated facility. So you're not getting people coming from out of town who are unloading their bikes and walking. It's a very local kind of recreational amenity. It's more like a linear park. The connectivity, again, we've already got people walking along. 'Cause,
Right.
I mean, you've got Christ Hospital, which is one of the larger or bigger employers. That
By
has
the way, were pedestrian counts included in any of the traffic studies that were done at all, or was it all motor vehicle? So we have no idea what the pedestrian counts are in there.
And typically you wouldn't do them where the
No, but that's really the issue here, is I don't think anybody argues and if they do, I didn't hear it, but argues the widening of Harrison or the need to do
Right, I
that.
agree.
It's
Nobody
really
does.
all about the
Sidewalks.
pedestrian walkway here, trail or sidewalk. Okay.
Can I ask, just for clarification's sake, are you suggesting that if you build the sidewalk to connect all of Philview with sidewalks, that the sidewalk on Harrison Avenue is eliminated?
Yeah,
Yeah. I was about to walk over myself.
Currently, there is about a 3-foot wide sidewalk that extends the entire, on this side of Harrison Avenue. On both sides of Harrison Avenue, there are sidewalks. There's currently one on this side as well as on the side where Kroger's is. Kroger's is here. There's a steep embankment in this area, and to widen the roadway and maintain the sidewalk, everything had to get pushed out another 5 feet. We had to widen the sidewalk to a minimum of 5 feet. So,
Well, the steep embankment is on the other side.
it's on both sides. Philview is, this is probably a 35. Harrison, I'm sorry. Harrison.
Yeah.
Both sides
Yeah,
of Harrison
yeah.
is an embankment. So we've had to do slope stabilization on this side of Harrison Avenue for the widening of the sidewalk. And it was kind of determined through value engineering that if we were able to utilize the existing kind of flat roadbed, which consisted of the sidewalk, we would not need to get into stabilization on this side of Philview. To accomplish that, it looked relatively straightforward to look at moving the sidewalk around to expand opportunities to connect the existing sidewalk and to provide a loop. This side of the street versus this side of the street is because the grades that work on this side of the street. This is kind of a hole. This is kind of a more or less a ridge line. So we didn't need to build our kind of connections down into this were a lot less significant. So it became notwithstanding the folks who are going to have walks in front of their homes, but it became the logical side from an engineering perspective. It was the least expensive, easiest to accomplish. Then you look at the fact that we did have a trail plan here that was going to connect to this location, which has ultimately been funded. We purchased this property to do so. So it again became an opportunity to connect. It is not a full-on bike trail, but it does provide the ability for looping. I don't know that anybody is going to argue that we have thousands of people walking on the trail. I've walked on it myself. It's used a lot during the mornings. It tends to be, it is a local trail. It is a trail that I think benefits the local residents more so than a regional impact trail. We had hopes to provide upgraded pedestrian facilities, and part of it is just providing upgraded pedestrian facilities. We would hope to be able to have Harrison Avenue all the way to 74 serve the sidewalks eventually. I mean, you can't walk to our building.
How far do if we're, Hillview comes in across from the entrance to Kroger's and the cinema and all that is right there. How far, as you're looking at the map to the right, does the existing business strip go? You've got the drive-through there.
Drive-through and the rack office building here. So we're taking the sidewalks, existing sidewalks, and upgrading them to that point. So those folks could walk to there.
Right.
And then on the other side, you have this Murphy Insurance and the water mill in property. Again, they could walk to utilize.
And between them is where you've got sort of the embankment.
Which was the embankment area.
Yeah.
And I've walked that a number of times in the review of the engineering of this process. And it's very inhospitable sidewalk at best. This provides a more pleasant and safer environment. We would hope that people would utilize sidewalks.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
If I may address a couple things here. For the people in the audience, there is a fact sheet, which the commissioners have a copy of. The fact sheet's back here on the table. Feel free to pick them up. If anybody has questions, we have a set of plans upstairs. That's where we'll be going after this is over with. Todd, in response to your question about the most difficult part of this whole thing, I think we sent out 260 letters notifying people of this hearing. I think we had 2 comments from people on Harrison. Everything else has been on Fillview. So you are correct in that the sidewalk along Fillview is the most contentious. I would point out that there are, as Adam said, if you look at Fillview, there are no right-of-way takes. There are some temporary easements. That means most of the work, the greater majority of the work, is within the existing right-of-way. I will point out a couple things here. One gentleman made a comment about us not resurfacing our roads. We would really like to resurface the roads quicker. The recent gas tax increase is going to enable us to do more resurfacing per year. And as far as maintaining walks, I think as some of the commissioners know, we do a yearly sidewalk program. And if I'm not, it started out as a 4-year program where all the sidewalk was inspected every 4th year. I think we're now on a 6-year program. So we do maintain the sidewalks, or have the sidewalks maintained along county roads. We do not go onto township roads. We do not go onto state highways.
Right.
But along county roads, we do have a sidewalk program that we have a gentleman do those, look and inspect all those.
Someone said that all of these are county roads here.
These are all county, Harrison and Fillview are both county roads.
What about Hutchinson?
Hutchinson is also a county road, yes. The other thing I'll point out, and no one mentioned this, I did talk to a couple upstairs. They were talking about an MSD project and some other stuff that was being done. Our intent is, as we always do, depending upon the results of this hearing, would be to send this set of plans out to all the utilities, whether they are there or whether they are not there. We will tell them what we're going to do, when we expect to do it. And they will know that either they get ahead of us or become part of us, because if they come in after us, there's going to be a major debate.
Right.
And I think I addressed everybody's comment. I'm not sure. But
that policy was developed about 15 years ago, I think, and it's worked very well. So we're not constantly reopening roads and wasting public money.
And I think the sanitary sewer, like I say, if they've got plans to do it, they might very well become a part of this project, but I won't know that until we send the plans out to the utilities.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't have any right now.
I don't either.
I have one question, Madam President. The federal housing, the 50% that you got, are you able to transfer that to another project, or is it specific for that one? So at the point that maybe this is not approved, I'm not saying it's not, the ability to be able to take that money, you have to reapply, or it would just go away?
It would basically go away. What it, as Frank and both Adams said, it's funding through OKI.
Sure.
So if for some reason this project was to be deleted or not followed, that money would go back to OKI, and then the people down there, and I'm a member of the one board that votes on this. I don't remember whether usually we have excess more projects than we have funding for. So they would say, okay, $3.5 million is now available. Who below the line, the original line, can use this money, and they would start going down that line until either the money was spent, or until someone says, okay, fine, we'll take the $3.5 million and go for it. You cannot, Green Township cannot take this money and put it to Wesselman or whatever they want to do.
Sure.
It has to go to this project because there is a rating system. So it wouldn't be fair to just allow it to switch.
Okay.
All right, great, thank you.
Anything
so
else?
what we have the hearing in front of us. We've got the information. We've had public testimony. So what is the time frame here, and what are the actions required?
Well, that is somewhat up to the board right now. Historically, you have two choices. If you feel that you've had enough input to make a decision ultimately, you can conclude the hearing. If that's the case, then 2 weeks from now, we would present a resolution with a big pack of descriptions to the board to formally establish the project. If you feel that you need more input, or whatever the case may be, you have the option to continue the hearing, and that would be strictly whenever you want to continue it. So I can't answer that question specifically. On the fact sheet, there is a time frame on the back page.
Right.
The township, well, according to the Ellis program for the project, and what the township wants to do is it's a single sheet. Yeah, there you go, right at the top.
Yep.
What the township wants to do is to advertise for construction, the project construction bidding in December, which would mean that actual heavy construction, let's say, would take place next year. Now, if everything goes right, utility relocations, electric poles, telephone poles, whatever the case may be, hopefully will be done sometime late this year, so they're out of the way before the roadway contractor has to get started. But there is a time frame listed in the back of that fact sheet.
All right, so I feel as though, and correct me if I'm wrong, colleagues, that clearly the road project needs to move forward, and I'm sure the community is in favor of this. I think we all are familiar with this area. So it sounds to me like the sidewalk needs maybe a little bit more vetting, and I hear some of the speakers talking about the width of the sidewalk, and I don't know if it's been made clear at this hearing what's what, and I'm hopeful that you can go back to some of the folks that spoke here today and kind of clear up any confusion that exists related to their own properties. So it intrigues me that people are using the bike trail. This connects the bike trail to other sidewalks and ultimately to the business district, and yet we're not hearing from any users of the bike trail. And I don't, when we can say what we want about public hearing and who shows up, I think it varies from one issue to the next. But I am intrigued by that. So, and I understand the idea that we've challenged as a commission, I think even in policy statements that we've issued for our colleagues at the township level and otherwise to be more green, to have more pedestrian-friendly environments so that people can move around this county on foot as opposed to jumping in the car every time they want to, get somewhere. So I'm a little conflicted on this one.
Veterans Park was just voted by Cincinnati Magazine the #1 on the west side
Right.
walking
So
park.
people love it.
Eventually, if we can allow people to not drive and park at our administration building. They can walk from Bridgetown Road to Veterans Park and go to a public
Right.
meeting. That's-
Well, and so the concerns here then are from the residents that are directly impacted, right, by this. So this is where the conflict lies. I think generally people might be supportive if it didn't land in their front yard, right? So anyway, I'm wondering, I'm a little uncomfortable taking any action today. I don't know if you guys are ready to go. I feel like I need a little bit more time with this, unless you all feel otherwise. Yeah.
I just say if there's some way that we're able to separate, and I don't know that there is, but I like you, I think, I don't want to waste any time at all on moving forward on the roadway project, but it's the issue of the sidewalk/trail that is, I think, I, for one, need more information on and need to think about that longer than.
If I could address that question,
also-
to be perfectly frank, I really don't know. You know how the
You don't
system.
know if we can separate the two?
Yeah, because it was presented as one project, and you're familiar with how the ICC and the Executive Board rates those projects. I don't know what the impact would be to eliminate the pedestrian feature along Philview.
Okay, so in that case, and
It
Commissioner.
might endanger the
Hold on a
project,
second.
yes.
Go ahead.
No, I had requested additional information from them
Okay,
also. That
okay.
I'm-
All right, so let's do this. Let's,
do-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Madam President, but I do know that due to public opinion and the environment of where you're building, if there's some opposition, strong opposition to that sidewalk area, there can be adjustments made as you work on your project, because we've done it before.
Well, again, it depends upon how the project was rated.
Uh-huh.
If the sidewalk, if the pedestrian facilities along Philview, let's say, carried the rating, or it helped boost the rating up above the line, if you eliminate that pedestrian
See,
feature,
okay.
it could endanger, and again, I don't know what the ratings were.
Okay, all
Well,
right,
it is
all
a
right. So
facet.
I'm going to take back my idea of separating the two.
It could be
I hear
possible,
you.
but-
Well, because if we in 2 weeks can make a decision here, that's not much of a delay.
No, that would be normal.
All right, so let's do this. Let's continue the hearing for 2 weeks. We'll take it up at our meeting in 2 weeks. We don't have a meeting next week. Gather more oh, it's in Anderson. Okay. Boy, on the other side of the county. Sorry, you guys.
The 29th would not be,
No, I think
A
2
depth.
weeks. I would prefer to get it going. So, all right, so we'll take it up in 2 weeks. And yeah, I think there's a clear positive approach on this, on the roadway. Let's think a little bit, get more information about the sidewalk issue, talk more to the residents to see if there's a way that we can all agree to. So that would be my direction here. Is that feel good? All right, so that's what we're going to do.
so we'll continue the hearing.
Continue
till
the hearing for 2 weeks.
And then, as I mentioned, the final establishment would be 2 weeks after
We
that.
would, with an expectation that we will take action in 2 weeks.
No, I think.
Close
again,
the
I'm
hearing.
trying- Close the hearing on the 15th, and then the resolution would be presented to you on the 29th.
All right, does that timing work for you guys?
I don't think the 2 weeks delay will make a big difference.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you. All right, so we've got another public hearing to consider zone case green 2019-05, Harrison Buffalo Wings, Wild Wings from A-2. So also Green Township, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Huth with Planning and Development Staff. First of all, behind you, you have the location map. So the area being discussed is shaded here in gray. It's along the corridor of Harrison Pike we were just discussing. This aerial photo is a little out of date. This is the building pad for the new Kroger, which has been completed. Here's the cinema and nearby condominiums. This is Canterbury Row condominiums, Arbor Woods condominiums. So again, the site we're discussing is here, and this is Harrison Avenue running kind of north-south. As part of this proposal, it's about a 10-acre tract. Half of the tract, the northern piece, would actually remain as open space. It would contain a detention pond, but would not contain any development. So I want to turn your attention to the site plan here. This is the most recent plan that's been submitted. North is now facing this way. So this is the new Kroger Marketplace. This is North Arbor Woods Drive. If approved, this proposal would allow a 8,000 square foot Buffalo Wild Wings restaurant here, and an additional 10,000 square feet of commercial space here. It would include a parking lot with 253 spaces. It would have a retaining wall along the back side that would be 8 feet high at its highest point. There would be a 6-foot-high privacy fence on top of that retaining wall. Again, the back portion would remain as green space with the proposed retention pond located here. There, as you can tell, there's significant landscaping that's being proposed along Harrison Avenue, along North Arbor Woods Court, and along the western boundary and northern boundary as well. We did have a staff review conference out in the township in January. It was attended by about 20 residents. The concerns at that meeting included visibility from Canterbury Road condominiums, which is here. There was also discussion about turning in and out of this development, which is quite difficult. There was also discussion about just general traffic congestion along Harrison Avenue as well, and also potential noise from this project, because there is some outdoor seating proposed on this side, the south side of the proposed building. Throughout the process, the applicant has made several changes to this plan, including reducing the size of the development, increasing landscaping, especially along the northern portion, including a portion of the northwestern portion of the site that would remain undisturbed, so all those woods that exist now would remain as is. Also, increased buffering along the proposed retaining wall and a reduction of the parking that was originally proposed. We're also recommending as staff a condition regarding the noise that no live music, outdoor speaker, or dumpster service shall be permitted between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. So both the Regional Planning Commission and the Rural Zoning Commission recommended approval. Green Township submitted a letter in support of the project, and the township's recommended conditions were included in the Rural Zoning Commission's conditions of approval, including a pre-construction meeting requirement at the request of the Green Township trustees. So that's all I have, and I'd be glad to try to answer any questions regarding this project.
All right, thank you. We have some speakers' cards on this public hearing as well. If there are no objections, I'd like to go to the speakers' cards and public comment. Is that all right? Yep. All right. The first card I have is it's either Mr. or Mrs. Brown.
It's D-I-X, Brown.
Dix. Thank you. The pleasure of the floor. I thought it said DIT in my mind, so I knew that wasn't right. So you have the pleasure of the floor for 2 minutes. No worries. Thank you.
No digital. My name is Dix Brown. I live in Canterbury Road condos, and over the past, let's say, year, we've been in contact with Green Township, the developer, and the consultant. And the last meeting that we had was a full-size plan sheet of the landscaping proposed by the developer, and we all basically agreed, we, Canterbury Row, as well as Green Township, agreed the landscaping was good. The other thing I want to figure out is in the notes when we started all this and so on, we have a water treatment plant that we want to have an inspection made prior to construction of the BW3s. And that was in the notes and so on. I've got it back there. And I'd just like to know when we can get with everybody, the county, the waterworks, whomever is involved, and get a meeting prior to construction, even when they come in and start clearing and grubbing. That's the only thing I have to say.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. And where did John go? After, let's the last speaker, and then we're going to call you back up to answer the questions. All right, our last speaker on this is David Metz. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. My name is Dave Metz. I'm a senior vice president with NAI Bergman, which is a commercial brokerage development property management firm here in Cincinnati. I live at 6890 Jennifer Lynn in Green Township. I'm 5 minutes from this, and very invested in Green Township in general. This I represent both the buyer and the seller, buyer/developer and seller on this project in an effort to get this zoning approved. This started, our conversations with the county started well over a year ago. It was suggested that prior to going through the zoning effort that we work out access to Harrison Avenue, to the traffic light for the benefit, the safety of all users of this facility, and to eliminate another access point on Harrison Avenue. We spent the next year working with Kroger's and Arbor Woods, who control the ownership of the drive to the light. Rosalind Meister, who is president of Arbor Woods, we worked with Rosalind and her group for well over a year to arrive at something that put their minds more at ease in terms of what was going to be built, the buffering, the widening of the drive, some sidewalks, and other issues. And we do have an agreement in place with them, and an agreement with Kroger's in terms of the use of that drive. After receiving those, we started our zoning effort through the county, and as we've gone through this process, we've continued to improve or adhere to the suggestions of the county in terms of this piece of land is 11 acres, but we've agreed to deed restrict over half of it. That will never be anything but green space on into the future. There was a land use plan.
If you could summarize, we would appreciate.
Okay. The land use plan that basically forced us to reduce parking by over 100 parking spaces, which we did. And we did an extensive buffering for landscaping for the benefit of all parties here. The one thing I will ask is that in discussion of outside sound, I know that the county has a resolution that allows for outside sounds to be at decibel level during the 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. at 62 decibels and 52 after. We do not play the BW3s, which is the primary anchor tenant, does not play music, does not have bands. It merely has TVs, sports-oriented type events, and they would ask that they could have sound to the levels of the corporate current resolutions in place with the county.
Thank you. All right, John, going to ask you to come up and respond to the first speaker's question about the additional meeting.
So the Canterbury Row condos here, they have their own private sewer treatment plant, if you will, and it's located in this area here. It is off-site. It is not part of this zone change area. And I don't believe that they would be utilizing the sewage treatment plant. I would believe they'd be tying into public sewer, but someone can correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm not sure how they're related, and I don't think it's enforceable to do any kind of off-site requirements since we're just talking about this parcel here, which, again, does not include the private sewer treatment plant of Canterbury Row.
So I think the idea was more about just a meeting so that the clarity is provided to the people that are concerned about that. So if we could set something like that up, I think that might just be useful. I think that's what was being asked.
Great.
Oh, and Frank wants to say a word. And before you do, I just want to say that we talk a lot about ingress, egress for projects like this and impacts to neighbors. Thank you to the developer and others and the residents who weighed in on this one before it got to us, because you can see that the access point is something that I feel like it's not off Harrison, it's not off a residential street, and that's really helpful, I think, for everybody involved. So, Frank, do you want to comment to the other issue?
Sorry, I was outside, but I was in on that meeting with Mr. Brown, and we did, Mr. Getzman and I, it's kind of a typical practice before the developer develops in Hamilton County. We have all the parties together, and we just want to make sure that some of the critical amenities on their site are protected during the development process, and any mature trees that we can save. And that's when we said, let's meet with MSD, Soil and Water, everybody else to make sure that things are protected. But you're seeing the final iteration of this, and we've moved parking out of the area in the land use plan that was questionable, and I think we've improved this site significantly with all parties working together from a traffic safety, a pedestrian, and a green space perspective. I think it's really a great development.
So are you saying that the meeting is forthcoming?
We would be forthcoming, yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
let's make sure Mr. Brown and everybody else that's
Okay.
interested in that is invited to the
Yep,
meeting?
yep.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, any questions, comments?
Madam President,
Yep.
just a question. I'm inquisitive about the parking. You said, of course, Wild Wings is a primary anchor. Is there some, it seems like an inordinate amount of parking. I might be wrong, but the other commercial site, do you anticipate what that might be or not?
I have not heard what might go into the other 10,000 square feet. The site was way overparked when the original plans came in. You've heard them say they reduced the parking. That's correct, they did. According to our zoning resolution, it is still overparked. They have more than what's required in our zoning resolution.
Right, that's
for
what-
the amount of
that's-
square footage.
That's what I thought. That's why I thought there was some vision on what that other building might be and the necessity for more
I
parking.
believe there's enough parking there to accommodate if all
Sure.
of the space was a restaurant, because restaurant generates the most traffic and requires the
Right.
most parking. So
Right.
if all this was to be restaurant,
Uh-huh.
there is enough parking to accommodate that.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have, Madam President.
If I could, I don't know if Mr. Metz can add any light to that. I know that there's a lot of confidentiality around all this stuff, but, yeah, just in general, other users, commercial users, and their relation to the amount of parking that you feel is necessary.
I think, first of all, if you've ever been, and I'm sure most of us have, been to a BW3s on primary called events such as game days and things like that, these things are typically next to other commercial, sometimes in front of a Kroger's, in front of a Walmart, and adjacent to or whatever, and they have cross-access parking and access and parking agreements. That is not the case here. While we have a cross-access agreement with Kroger's, we are not allowed to park on their property. In addition to that, as was mentioned earlier, it's not precluded that the balance of that space or a good portion of that could be another restaurant. So the combination of that impact of the potential of those two uses at the same time, along with the potential fitness, which is a huge user of parking, salon shops and things of that nature, it was felt that this amount of parking is greatly needed. It was done within the boundaries of the land use. It was reduced to conform and fit within the existing land use approval, and reduce the site from an 11-acre to a 5.5-acre development. So it is a critical element of the parking is a critical element.
So just one follow-up. It sounds to me that while you may not have anything specific in mind, the intent certainly is that there will likely be another commercial tenant here that
Without any question.
will add to the need for parking.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. I have no further questions, and seeing none from my colleagues, talk to us about our next steps here.
So the next step would be, if you're ready to approve it, would be to close this public hearing and request a resolution of approval from staff, which we will produce tomorrow or Monday. And then you would vote on it in 2 weeks.
Okay, all right, great. So I am going to move that we close the hearing and ask the administration to get that resolution of support together so that we can vote at it at our next meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Yes.
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 Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. All right. We've got one more hearing to consider revisions to the Stormwater District rules and regulations. Jeff, I don't know who is speaking to this.
Excuse me.
Looks like it's Ted Hubbard is speaking to this.
I think there's a misprint. I think the meeting is scheduled for the 29th of August and the 5th of September. I don't know because of the no. Well, that's because that's when the that is when the notice went out in the paper, and I don't know if there was, I'm sorry, but I just think it's yeah. Yeah, originally it was supposed to be today, but we want to make sure that the public.
So what's legally noticed for today, so we're good. I'll delete it from the agenda.
And we'll get to the appropriate date. That's fine.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
thank you, Ted.
We'll stay tuned.
All right, very good. That concludes our public hearings. We have one other speaker's card on it, not related to the agenda, from Dr. Vlasta Molak. Dr. Molak, you've got the pleasure of the floor for 2 minutes.
Yeah, just because federal money and state money is available doesn't mean that something is a great idea for development. I've lived in this county for 38 years, and I've seen numerous projects that have cost lots of taxpayers' money because they say, oh, it's going to really improve the area, it's going to do all these great things, and there's never an afterlife and evaluation of what had happened, like the stadiums, like the MSD projects, $4 billion, $1 billion stadiums, another who knows how many millions for a third stadium, and all those stadiums sitting in empty. And in my neighborhood now they want to demolish the schools, some 6 or 7 school buildings that are as old as my house and the rest of the neighborhood housing, and they claim that it's going to improve the education, it's going to do all kinds of stuff. For 10 years I tried to offer them free evaluation to bring those school buildings up to date. Those buildings are about 60 years old, but I cannot get them to do that. They want to demolish everything and build the new buildings at the cost of 10% increase in our real estate rates. And so whenever I hear development, I get very suspicious. One really has to go to the roots of a problem, just like with your support for mental and retardation and all this welfare stuff. You need to go to the root of the problem. Why do we have increases in mental health needs and development needs? Unless you go to the root of the problem, you cannot solve it. So I suggest that you start thinking long-term about the roots, because although one of your party members says that the Earth is going bust in 12 years, you're still planning for driving. She said we'll be bust in 12 years.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go back to the first page of our agenda. With your deference, I would like to move forward with Jeff Aludo's comments because it involves 2 by-leaves related to the levies, and I know we've got people in the audience who have been waiting patiently for a vote on these 2 by-leave items. So Jeff, if you wouldn't mind outlining these items, we'll bring those forward.
Thank you, Commissioners. So we have 2 by-leave items in your packet. They should be resolutions 30 and 31, and as I'm pulling these to the forefront, I ask Lisa Webb, if I think she's still in here, to come forward. But these are the resolution certifying to the ballot the Development Disability Services Levy and the Family Services and Treatment Levy. So I would just ask Lisa to give a bit of background on that.
Thank you.
Yes, the 2 resolutions before you, Resolution 30 and Resolution 31, are the resolutions to put the levies on the ballot for the November 5th election. Both of these have gone through the tax levy review process, started in January, through several meetings, interviews, tours, and public hearings by the tax levy committee, concluded at the end of June, and then a public hearing for the commissioners on July 18th out at the Board of Elections. At that time, the public hearing was the week prior, thank you, as well as the approval of the auditor's certification of millage, which you'll find in the back pages of those of the resolutions you have before you today, with the amounts for $100 home, estimated annual revenue, and that the levies are a flat renewal for a 5-year period. We are requesting approval for the ballot for both of the items. The first up would be the Family Services and Treatment Levy, followed by the Developmental Disability Services Levy.
All right, thank you. And just for clarity's sake, this is 2 levies going on flat for the November ballot.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I as part of my bylaws, I was just going to note the public hearing that we had, and thank you to everybody for coming out. We had a packed house that night. Ooh, and I was late for that because I was stuck on I-75, now that I recall that. Anyway, it was really great to see so many people coming out in support of both of these levies, and really they're coming out in support of the work that is done by the DD services and by family, in Talbot House in particular, through family services. So thank you for all the public input, and to the providers. We are so grateful that you make us proud in this community because of the service that you provide for those that really are challenged and need the services the most. So I know you're in the back of the room, and we just want to thank you for everything that you would do every day. So I am ready to move these, but are there additional comments or questions from the commissioners?
Madam President, on Resolution 30, I'm wondering the necessity of the last line, which says services and treatment programs, including those currently provided by Talbot House. Being that we have so many great agencies that do great things, what is the necessity of pointing out Talbot House?
We do. That language is the exact ballot language as it's appeared on the ballot since the levy was created in 2008.
Okay.
And any changes we would do to ballot language would require the rescoping of the levy and having it be a new levy with an additional millage calculation to it. That language is language that was approved at the time by the prosecutor's office. It is accurate. They are services that are currently provided by Talbot House, but those services are competitively bid at the beginning of each levy cycle and open to competitive bid.
Okay, you said a few things.
Yes.
The millage would have to change. Why is that?
Because these levies are renewal levies, they're calculated based on the millage, the property values when they were first put on the ballot.
So if we take Talbot House off, that would be, we have to revamp everything.
We would have to revamp
So
everything.
I would-
We would have to go back and do another auditor certificate.
Okay,
And the millage on the average home taxpayer would actually increase based on some reimbursements and things that are calculated.
So I'm asking, as we review in 2 years? Or
I'm
is this
sorry?
when we review this levy again, if we can look at the writing on there and not just point out Talbot House, because we have lots of great agencies. So
Absolutely.
that's my only comment.
We can make sure to include that when the tax levy review committee does it again.
Thank you. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you for your work on this and the other as well, Lisa. I was unable to make the public hearing. I had a nasty bug that I was dealing with. But I did have the opportunity to review the public hearing through the wonders of modern technology and video recording and the like. So I do want to say thank you to everyone who did turn out and that evening and offer their comment relative to the levies and the importance of them, and that we continue to do them. And my thanks, again, very much to proponents, to various boards, staff that implements the direction that is given, and all the sub-agencies that provide the service. They do wonderful work, and they all work very hard to make sure that these would be on for renewal with no increase at all. Very, very important in this current tax climate. So again, to everybody, thank you for your great work on doing all of that.
Thank you. Also, we should give a big old shout out to the TLRC, who does all the work behind the scenes and makes the recommendations to the board. So thank you to all of them for all their work.
Probably hundreds of hours, yes.
All right. So I am going to move that we approve of Resolution 30. Michael, do I have to read this all, or is that enough?
I think you identifying as that Resolution 30 has been identified in the bylaws package is enough.
All right. I will move to approve of Resolution 30.
Second.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. And I will also move to approve of Resolution 31.
Second.
Yes?
Yes.
Can we say what 31
I'm
is?
sorry?
We haven't talked about it.
Oh, she didn't.
I'm sorry, we didn't get a yes.
Yeah.
So Resolution 31 is one of the two levies we just discussed for,
Developmental disability.
yeah, the DDS, it's the DDS portion of the levies. So again, I'm going to do this again, Jackie. So I'm going to move to approve of Resolution number 31.
Second.
Yes.
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 Thank you. Thank you, and thank you all for being here and all the work behind the scenes on these two items. All right, we're going to go back to the top of comments and motions then. Commissioner Summerall Dumas.
Thank you, Madam President. Specifically, I wanted to thank Lighthouse for coming to visit me, their agency, and let me know, which I have a history working with them in the field, but they do great work. As I said earlier, there are so many agencies out there that do, and so I was glad that they came to see us in the office. And then I also attended the First Suburbs Consortium, which deals with all the suburban areas and what's going on out there. There was a great report given that evening, and just a little highlights. They talked about poverty, and poverty is increasing in all but 2 suburbs, and I mean dramatically increasing. The 2 suburbs that are not impacted are Amberley and Montgomery. And also, 8 communities have double-digit increases in their poverty rate. So we need to look at the transition and how people are moving out into the suburban areas and the impact of the economy, the way of living, things like that. The suburban area has 25.03% of the county, about 200,864 people. So there's a lot of people that we need to look at. How can we help them as it relates to affordable housing? We're building a lot of beautiful condos all over, and that's great. They gave a statistic that if there were 1,000 people that needed affordable housing, there's only 25 houses available. So those are just little tidbits of what they gave out. I'd be happy to pass the information on to my other colleagues also, but it was just so interesting, all the work that's been done in that area, so we can look at the transition of people and how to build more affordable housing. And we have to look at that, I believe, as a board. We need to look at how to create more affordable housing. And that will end my report, Madam President.
Thank you. Commissioner Portun.
Madam President, thank you. 2 items that I'd like to address today. First of all, as it relates to the issues of the Hamilton County Fair in the discussion that we had on Tuesday, I just thought it was important to offer some clarifying comment because at least one of the accounts I saw suggested, Madam President, that you were proposing consolidating the Harvest Home Fair with the Hamilton County Fair, and that was a major focus of the discussion that we had about that. And I think the manner of conveying that publicly in that news account did not do justice to the conversation, and I think it unfairly put you into the middle of an issue that you actually didn't raise or propose, but simply were putting together a task force to look at all manner of options, and we're reaching out to all of our major fair operators and others to want to come together and talk about what the best solutions might be. So felt it appropriate to try to offer some clarifying comment to that, because sometimes these things take on lives of their own, which is not anything that was ever intended, and hopefully people will pay heed to that. I thought the idea of a task force, said it on Tuesday, say it again today, is a great idea in the direction we need to move forward, and I'm looking forward to when we can take action on that. Second, just want to ask my colleagues to consider and maybe respond to the issues regarding the display of the certain iconic elements of the USS Cincinnati down at the banks. I have circulated several times a request that we all weigh in as to what we'd like to see happen. The Sub-Cincy organization, I think, has offered some good clarifying comment from their perspective that would allow for a potentially a much reduced footprint to serve for the display of those elements. We did adopt a resolution that the Navy relied upon prior to releasing those elements to this region some years ago. So we need to get about, I think, the the business of trying to finalize whatever the decision might be regarding that. Not that there's any specific pressure on us to do this, but the commissioning of the new USS Cincinnati will be October 5th, this October 5th. And while there's no requirement that we do this at all, it might be a nice gesture related to all this if we were able to identify where we may wish for this display to take place at or before the commissioning of the new USS Cincinnati. So just ask that you would, and I can recirculate the various attachments and emails to everybody.
That would be great.
Again.
I think
Okay.
that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's all.
Thank you. Thank you for raising the issue about the fair. I did talk to Pete Rebold. He's with the Harvest Home Fair this morning, and I regret not calling him before. I was going to call folks the later part of this week, and I should have done that before. So anyways, I've cleared the air with him and just asked that they participate by way of their expertise at throwing a fair, and what they offer and how we might learn and coordinate our efforts and cooperate with one another. So we did have a good conversation about that. Also, there was a major announcement about the banks, about a new building on the banks. It's evidently going to be spectacular. It's glass. It's got 11 floors of offices, some retail on the bottom. This is finishing out phase 1 of the bank, so it's just to the east of the Freedom Center. And so I think we are all celebrating that and moving towards final completion of the banks. We've got a little ways to go, but that certainly was a reason to celebrate. So I did want to note that. And then lastly, I was able to represent the commission at a bridging ceremony for the Girl Scouts, something I was not familiar with, even having been in the Girl Scouts for a short time. So literally they bridge from one age to the next or one level to the next, and they walk across a bridge. I mean, it's really cool. And so they went across the Purple People Bridge, but before they did, I had some comments about these young girls and their participation with this group that partners with them to build them up as young girls and leaders in this community. No matter what their interest is, they are important to us, and then they went on to bridge into the next level of Girl Scouts. So it was my pleasure to do that on behalf of the commission. And I don't know if you know this, well, they're very young. And so I was noting some prior Girl Scouts like Queen Elizabeth and Madeleine Albright and Condoleezza Rice, and so, they're astronauts. Well, but the one they knew was Taylor Swift, which was fine. And so we played some music, and it was lovely. But anyway, it was a fun ceremony. So that's all I have. Jeff, do you have anything additional?
Just one additional comment, especially since our friends from MSD are here. But this being August, I believe this is the first month of eligibility for the Customer Assistance Program that we worked with the City of Cincinnati and MSD in putting together. So that for those who are watching at home, low-income seniors are eligible for Customer Assistance Program, which results in a reduction of 25% in the rates for their sewer bills. So if there's people watching who are interested in that program, again, this is the first month of eligibility, they can either go to MSD's website of msdgc.org, or they can call 244-5101. But this is a great way for us to try to keep our sewer rates affordable for some of those who are most needy in the community. Just wanted to make sure that since this is the first day of eligibility, the first month of eligibility, that we got that word out.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for that reminder. All right, we're going to move to the regular agenda. The engineers up first. Ted Hubbard, you've got items 1 through 5.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Item 1 pertains to a resolution that would authorize the awarding of a project on Shady Lanes. It's the replacement of a culvert project. We did postpone this for a year because the road closures, other road closures are on the west side, so we tried to reduce the inconvenience as much as possible. Item 2 pertains to a resolution that would authorize a joint agreement with Green Township for the improvement of Race Road. We are going to be resurfacing Race Road from rehabilitating from Boomer to Windmere. It's badly needed. Item 3 pertains actually to the submittal of the establishment documents that were the focus of the hearing today. It's not a resolution. It's just the technical documents, the centerline description, the easement descriptions, and such. Item 4 pertains to a resolution that would authorize a commencement of the bidding process for Race Road. So we will be selecting a contractor, start that process to get that work done. Be nice to have that done this summer, if at all this year, this construction season, if at all possible. Item 5 pertains to a resolution authorizing the commencement the commencement of the bidding process for the correction of the Summit Road slide. Many of you travel down southbound on 75 in the Ronald Reagan Highway area. If you look to the east, you'll see a rather impressive landslide, and this is the one we're looking at. And so this is desperately needed, and we want to move forward as quickly as possible on it. So, those are the items I have for you today. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Okay, thank you. I have no questions. Anybody have any questions?
No questions.
No questions.
All right, great. I will move that we approve of regular agenda items 1 through 5.
Second.
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, Commissioners. Have a great
Thanks, Ted.
afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, the next items are related to MSD, items 6 through 8. I think, Jack, you're going to talk about.
Jack Reinecamp with Metropolitan Sewer District. Item number 6 is a request for additional construction funding for the Mill Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant Infiltrate and Headworks Odor Control Project. The project was bid in December of 2018, and the bid that we received exceeded the engineer's estimate of cost. Beyond the threshold that's legally and statutorily required, 10%. So the request is to appropriate an additional $789,200 to rebid the project. MSD had discovered that it was not the best bidding market at that point in time, was unfavorable. The contract had some complexities that were not taken into consideration by bidders, and so those are being more specifically called out, as well as there's higher equipment costs that have been reevaluated than what was originally expected. Item number 7 is a request for emergency construction for the Winton Woods Aerial Sewer Bridge 2 emergency sewer replacement. This request is for appropriating $646,900 for construction to address deficiencies in an existing Winton Woods aerial sewer that has a corrugated pipe that's on an aerial support that at some points crosses the lake, other points is on land. And the request is to 3 parts: to declare a real and present emergency that exists with regard to the performance of this asset, and actual physical disaster to structures, to authorize the Cincinnati City Manager and MSD to proceed with all necessary actions to replace the existing asset, and to appropriate the construction funding as I outlined before. Item 8 is a request from MSD to delegislate approximately 80 capital projects that consist of 28 allowance projects and 52 capital improvement projects for a total of $33 million that had been previously appropriated between, get my dates correct, please, 2005 and 2018, that these funds are no longer necessary to the performance of these projects and to the payment of any invoices or costs related to these projects. For item number 9, I respectfully defer to the county administrator, since MSD had not prepared that.
Great, thank you. And I think Karen Ball is going to speak to item number 9. So let's just take the 3 that we just talked about. So items 6, 7, and 8, are there any questions or comments related to those items?
Madam President, item 7, you said something about the Cincinnati City Manager, and I was confused on that one.
So for the purposes of MSD, the city of Cincinnati provides all procurement activities.
Okay.
And so this is authorizing the city manager to undertake all necessary actions.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought they were like putting money in. No. He said no.
Well, we are delegislating a lot of money, so
Right.
that's a good thing. All right, very good. So I will move that we approve of items 6, 7, and 8.
Second.
Yes.
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 Thank you. Thanks, Jack. Karen Ball, will you please come up and speak to item number 9?
Thank you. Karen Ball, Hamilton County Compliance Coordinator for MSD. On October 24th, 2018, you all authorized the change order 21 for Kokosing, which was a $3 million extension general conditions claim, and that it be paid by temporarily suspending the delegislation rule. At the same time, and during development of that final approval, the administration and the commission had discussions with MSD, and it was agreed that future change orders would be legislated, and that the remaining funds in the originally authorized $105 million, once the contract was entered into at $89 million, $105 million. The contract was entered into at $89 million. So there are remaining dollars in the VCS project account that should have been delegislated as part of the 2017 delegislation. Jack just mentioned that they've prepared the item 8. We had asked over the last 3 months that MSD include the delegislation for the VCS as part of this action on number 8. When we saw the final, it was not included, so the county did go ahead and prepare the delegislation document, now number 9. We have calculated the remaining dollars at $12,000,008 and some change. So the legislation in front of you today on number 9 delegislates the valley conveyance, and then with it memorializes an agreement that we have with MSD to allow an exception to the rule for the remainder of the change orders that have to be entered in, have to be executed, change order 22 through 30 at this point, to be guided by MSD delegated authority up to $150,000, and anything over and above that, the county would have review of those change orders.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments?
No questions.
Yeah. County Administrator.
Just very quickly, just to tack on to Karen's thoughts on this, and I appreciate her working this issue, but to echo her thoughts, this is something we've been talking with the city about for, well, I know Karen's and the team has been talking for several months, but I've been talking with the city manager for the past week or so on this. I think the concern from the city relates to the ability to move this, to approve change orders and move the project forward quickly, as it is a consent decree whip project. I think the resolution before you is prudent budgetary control. At the same time, I did commit to the city manager that we would meet soon next week to talk about their concerns as it relates to expeditiously advancing the project. And if there's anything additional we can do in terms of ensuring that things advance to the board quickly, to make sure if there are change orders that need to come before the board, that those are done so quickly, just so that we don't lose time on the project, and we will work with the city in that regard.
And I want to add one more thing, I'm sorry. We do have programmatic contingency, and there are dollars left in that, that pot of money in order to tap for change orders that come forward.
So a different fund from this one?
That is correct. And it can always be replenished if we get to the point where we're running low. We'll see it in.
Not the intent
we'll
of
see
this
it
board
in,
to create any more delays.
Correct. Right.
On this project that I drive by nearly every day.
And to be honest with you, the larger dollar change orders, they were already constructed. So it's just something we have to nail down.
Madam President, just one last comment, just to make sure from an administrative perspective we're on the right page here. There was a substitute resolution that was submitted. I think you all have it. And I think that specifically references the $150,000 change order status, that type of thing. Just want to make sure that we're looking at the right version.
Thank you. Yes, so we should all have a replacement item for number 9. We also have a replacement item for number 18, just to put on your radar. All right, so any questions or comments about replacement item number 9?
No questions.
No questions.
All right, so I will move that we approve of item number 9, the replacement item.
Second.
Yes.
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 Thank you. Thank you all for being here. All right, we are going to move into the consent agenda, and as I just said, item 18 has a replacement. Are there any questions or comments about items 10 through 25?
I have no questions, Madam President.
No questions.
All right, I'm going to move that we approve of consent agenda items 10 through 25.
Second.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. We've got a couple of travel items requesting authorization to travel at the county's expense. Coroner to Palm Springs, California. Coroner to Long Beach, California. Coroner, these are employees, not the coroner herself, presumably, to Louisville. And then the engineer has an employee going to Columbus, Ohio. I'll move to approve.
Second.
Yes.
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 All right.
Madam President?
Yes.
Just to be 100% clear, I know you referenced it, but item number 18 did include the revised, the vote was on the revised.
On the
version of
replacement,
supplement.
item 18. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else to come before the board?
I have nothing, Madam President.
Anything else?
Nothing further.
We don't have any executive sessions, so I'm gladly going to move to adjourn.
Second.
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.